Well, everybody knows the Zimbabwean voice now, that's for sure. And it's a beautiful voice, that one. One of unity, one of togetherness, one of peace, one of love, you know. That's the way forward. Oga, Oga.
On the African Highway Podcast Network, I'm Jimmy Mabena, and this is Zimbabwean Voices, the show where we shed light on Zimbabweans from all walks of life, doing positive work to shift the Zimbabwean narrative for the better. For episode 3, I had the privilege of interviewing my friend Tine Jakarasi, and she is a humanitarian and the founder of an organization called the As I Am Foundation. She's done so many different things. She's an author. She is a Obama Young Leader in the cohort of 2019. But above all, she's a vessel. She's a vessel for our community. And I think through her story and the work that she does, I think my intention for everyone that's listening is to hear about what it means to live a life that exists beyond yourself. That's the first thing. And the second thing is what it means to support somebody, you know? You will hear about the work that she does with education in marginalized communities in Zimbabwe for Zimbabwean children, or the support that she gives to Zimbabwean women for menstrual health issues. I just learned so much, and I hope that through her story, we can be inspired to do things that exist outside of ourselves, but then also, if we can't do that, to support those people that are impacting communities that we care about. So hear her story and help her, quite frankly, because I can't physically be in the areas that she's able to actually engage with, but I can help her in the work that she's doing and have an impact in that way. So I hope you enjoyed. Take care. Tine, thank you so much for the time, and for joining me. I think if everyone listening, I know I've been friends with you for a long, long time. Of course, I'm really good friends with your husband now. And I thought it'd be great that we have this chat because you and your life and the contribution that you've made to Zimbabwean society in the NGO space embodies what it means to be a positive Zimbabwean voice, specifically because you have used your history and your ailments and your journey to be a positive hand of contribution to other Zimbabwean lives. So I thought it'd be great that we have a chat to get a little bit of context around how you came to be where you are. But before I do, how are you? And I know the world has been crazy right now, but yeah, how are you doing and how are you holding up?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing what I can. The 20 lockdowns don't help. So you think you're kind of like out of it and then you're back into it. But yes. You know what? I think at the moment, the best thing is to try to stay positive. Keep yourself busy with other things because it's I think we're in a time where somehow we're dealing with things that are out of our control. A lot of the things
for sure.
A lot of the times you can control certain things, but it's a season in which all of us are learning that sometimes you've got to adapt, and you can't control everything. So I'm okay.
For sure. I remember I was speaking to someone recently, and what's been glaringly obvious about the time that we're living in is we can only control so much, and you can always put yourself in the best position. But the fact of the matter is that there's so much that is actually out of your control and out of your hands. So my question for you, I know more recently you've been doing some work with in the NGO space around helping schools helping children get funding for school. Maybe talk to us a little bit about that and what's been going on there given the past year. I know that was a big challenge when I spoke to you last, but maybe tell us about how you got into that and what's been up since then.
So that's a very interesting story. Okay, so I've been in the nonprofit NGO sector for 6 years.
Sure.
My main passion or the main thing is health and wellness, right? But when you go into communities and you're dealing especially with rural and peri-urban communities, somehow you can't go and tackle one thing. Everything is connected, right? So you go and you want to do a talk, perhaps. The kids are hungry or the people are hungry, which means you then have to tackle food security or whatever it is. So what actually happened with Take a Child to School was, it was the week before my 28th birthday, I think. I'd gone for a regular workshop. We were doing a workshop on consent, because in that particular time, there was a huge issue about transactional sex in that area, in that specific area. So, and this is with children. So we went to do a talk about consent and what rape is, etc., because a lot of children were being taken advantage of and not realizing what it was. And so that day I actually brought on someone else to speak to the kids about, the legal perspective, because I'm not well versed in that. And I went outside and then I saw a girl, I think her name was Princess, I think, standing outside. She's just standing outside. Asked her what's wrong. She says, that's Zingwa, Chikoro. I'm like, oh, okay, so you're just outside, So she's been told, your parents haven't paid fees. She's just standing outside. And I'm thinking, okay, so if that happens, then you go home. But I don't know what the situation was. She just stood outside. I would like to think it was God in that moment. So I start speaking to her. She says to me, yes, and my sister as well, etc. I'm like, oh, okay. And imagine I've worked there for about 3 years, but we never really spoken about the
people
school
being
fees
kicked
aspect
out
of it.
or school fees.
Yeah,
sure.
Because we do a lot of programming. So I went with her to the office and I said, how much is this actual fees? And I think at the time they said 65 bond or something like that.
And what is that in US dollars? In US dollars, how much would that be?
At the time, it was, I think about $2 or something at the time.
$2 for a term?
Yes, for
so
a term.
$6 for a year for someone's whole school fees.
Yes. So she says that to me and I'm shocked. And I literally took out my phone. I paid for the fees. I'm like, this is nonsense, I paid for the fees. So that week now, like I was saying, was my birthday. I then decided, you know what, let me channel whatever I'm going to get towards, all of this. Because I started asking a lot of the kids and a lot of the kids were like, yeah, some of us, we pay half or we pay a 10. I asked the teachers and they explained like, almost half of these kids, they come. And the thing is, we have to put pressure on the parents because if they don't pay anything, we also don't get paid. And so that's how Take a Child to School was born. And I remember I posted it on social media and everyone was shocked. Like, what do you mean? Like 65 bond. And people really jumped onto it. Initially, I'd even said, oh, just 10 kids. People jumped onto it. You jumped onto it. People jumped onto it. And for me, it was like just shocking that, people go out and spend thousands, right?
Yeah.
Hundreds of dollars. And here's a child who's standing outside, stressed about $2. And I was like, you know what, this is pretty simple, and that's how that project started in particular.
Okay. And look, I remember seeing that social media post and I remember being so shocked. I was like, and also compelled to say like, geez, what is $2? What is $6 for a year? You can do 3 or 4 or 5 children, you know what I mean? And if anything, like the power of education can do towards, of course, shaping someone's trajectory. And then you say, okay, well, if they aren't getting education, you spoke on stuff, earlier about sexual abuse or transactional sex, activities. That becomes almost an avenue which do you know what I'm trying to say? That becomes an avenue which a child has to explore, particularly young women. So I think that's terrific. I think the key question that I have, I know, given this pandemic, I know we had, of course, admitted a little bit for one young girl. And in the pandemic, maybe you speak to us about what happened to some of those students in the pandemic, because it was almost like a tricky situation, where we have people that want to donate and give, but significant challenges, came about. So maybe talk about that.
So when did this start? March, I think we had last year. The year started while people had paid. I remember, the most painful thing for me is we had a really great donation. There was a company that paid for 60 kids for the whole year, the whole of last year. Wow. And I'm like, we started on a good note. I was like, wow. At some point, Take a Child to School became even bigger than my other projects, because I think
it's a thing.
For people, I think like you said, they understood it's education. You don't have to explain it. Every child deserves education. So
yes.
We start the year, and then we're hearing about COVID, but particularly in Africa, in Zim, it hadn't affected us yet.
Sure.
And then March comes, and first of all, we are told 21 days, and we wait 21 days. I'm speaking to the head. I'm also trying to find out what the COVID situation is there as well. They don't even understand, what COVID is. But in your mind, you're like, it's just 21 days. We'll catch up. And, maybe we'll go speak to them about COVID. And then it turned out to be literally the whole year. Because our kids, our beneficiaries are, they are like the poor of the poor,
Yes.
And so, how other educational institutions then started doing online schooling, creating portals. Yes. I even know government schools went as far as even doing WhatsApp groups, So our
WhatsApp groups to distribute educational content via the phone.
People started becoming, I think for the first month or two, people were scared, and then they realized, look, you have grade 7s, you have form 4s, children can't just sit at home. So those type of things started happening. I remember even our helper at home, she came, she said to my mom, look, I need her daughter needed a tablet just to do WhatsApp, so the teacher will open a WhatsApp group, or the teacher will send the parents work, and then the parents will do work with the child, so that the children are not completely stagnant. But in the areas I work, there are no phones, there's no data, there's no electricity. And so our kids didn't go to school basically the whole year. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2, the actual teachers and the people who are running this are, for me, community heroes, okay? A lot of them have done, a teaching course, or particularly for one area, he started that school underneath a tree and it grew. But the thing is, he's got rent, he's got a family. And so people started pulling out. Teachers just said, you know what, we have to do other things. And particularly one of the schools basically shut down and collapsed.
And what's the name of the school?
Hopely Tariro. In Hopely, and
Tariro, which means hope, Tariro, directly translated,
means hope,
which means
and basically the head, he basically quit, to say. He basically quit. He actually even moved out of the area, and at the moment we're trying to revive that, but because of lockdown again, we haven't been able to do that. Kids open school in December. Just weird, like those terms are completely different from the terms you knew about or other people knew about. So I think when things started to kind of get better, they opened school in December, and they were doing this 2-day thing. So they would split so that the school is not too full. So some kids would go to school, 2 days a week. And then we started to revive it again. And, and also remember, well, this is how it kind of works with sponsors, is there's a momentum, right? There's a momentum, and they basically had it given in months, and we weren't going to take money as well if kids were not going to school, Naturally, so you have to start, we start picking up the momentum again. December comes through, and It was a very, very weird term. They start in the beginning, then you have Christmas, then they were supposed to be on holiday for like 2 weeks and then go back. And then we went into a total shutdown again this year. They opened again in March. But basically, these schools have almost a year and a half of backlog. Because of some of the issues we spoke about again, some of the children are not even interested in school anymore. They've started doing other things, you know. They've started indulging in drugs. The girls have gotten married. Some parents actually believe, you know what, the school thing doesn't even matter. You know, they must go vent. So it's a huge issue where you're trying to get the kids to actually come back. You're trying to get the sponsors back. And it's so confusing because we wake up and things have changed. So we wake up and we're like, okay, school is starting again in March 20th. And then we're told on the 15th, there's a lockdown. And so it's been crazy. You sit down and you're like, I remember there was a week where I was legit depressed and I was like, what do we do? And then you realize, okay, this is really out of your control. You have to deal with it as it comes. So again, kids were supposed to open on the 28th of June and we are in level 4 again.
We're in July.
Yeah, in July. And so we don't know when they're going to go back to school. And for me, I think it's so bad for them in particular because they're so behind. And we have kids who are in grade 2, but they're 14. So it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. And I've been trying to figure out a way to fix it. But like I told you, you're dealing with no power, no gadgets, probably a lack of manpower as well. Like, where do you start?
Yeah, I think it's tough because I remember when, of course, lockdown started happening, across the world, or curfews and things of that nature, and how really the whole world, not that we weren't using technology already, but the acceleration of the way in which we engage one another remotely just skyrocketed. So even now we're having this conversation online. Yeah. But of course, our lives have still been able to move forward now, relevant, at least for me, I can say, through online and technology. But then I couldn't help but think, like, it just screams of privilege, because what about people where there's no internet? You mentioned that students were, some students had to listen into the radio for education. Yeah. The radio. And then, but radio, you need to have power for radio. What if there's no power? Exactly. What if there's no power? So which means a year and a half.
And there is no power. There is no power. I remember when the radio thing started, I was like, wow, great. And then I asked around and the people are like, there is no power, especially in the high density areas. Okay. And then another thing is the kids are not interested. They're not interested in sitting and listening. Right. And the way it was structured is that, so they dedicated a few hours. So there would be 30 minutes of maths, 30 minutes of English, and it's a different way of learning. So there's someone on the other line, you can't see them, and they're just saying a lot of stuff, because I went through it and I was like, okay, I didn't get half of this stuff.
Even for myself, it's like, as
an adult, even for myself, I'm like, you can't be like, wait, I didn't hear what you said, Right. But again, then you have a power issue. So if you have a lesson at 10 and there's no power, you've missed the lesson. So
we need solutions that can exist without the constraint of electricity, that can go over the barriers that exist without, how can I say, if there's no data in the area, for example, we need things that can exist without electricity, without data being a constraint, and with people that can help facilitate the content for education. That's kind of the solution. And then also that's entertaining, that keeps people engaged and actually want to see value in the education that they're getting beyond. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. So if anyone's listening to this, I don't think it's a problem that is solved individually. I think it's, people being inspired and then being compelled towards finding a solution. And if anything we've learned from this whole COVID situation is to say we can't go back to the old way of doing education. Like we cannot go back, because who's to say COVID won't flare up again in the future, right? And from the all likelihood, it might be the case. So I guess the Zimbabwe in which I hope, at least for education at that particular peri-urban area or rural area, is one that is inclusive, that is can exist without power, and really just serve the needs of people there. Because if kids aren't going to school, what future does the country have? You know what I'm trying to say? If people aren't being educated. So
and you know, something interesting as well is when I was trying to find out also like how these kids are going to go forward. Apparently, I mean, this is apparently what they have been doing is that when they're doing exams, like for grade 7s, your O-level students, I think you're starting with a 30% already. So that helps, but I don't know if it helps as well. So there's
it doesn't solve the problem, but I hear where
where they're coming from. Like, you know what, you've missed school, so before you write an exam or whatever, you've already got 30%. It's a tricky one.
It's a cop out. I think it doesn't deal with the issue. We're trying to, because then we're basically filtering students through a process, an inefficient process, and we think the solution is batching people out of a funnel that they have a certificate that says I went to school. But really what's more important is teaching people from the onset and helping them and educating them to be able to be people who can leave that funnel with the ability to solve problems, but not, if I add 30% in the beginning, it doesn't really deal with the issue. But so I don't know
if it actually happened, but there were discussions about that, because people were saying, you know what, look, it's unfair as well for you to grade children who've been in and out of school, who've had to learn a new way of school. But yeah, I'll need to confirm. But there were discussions, and I also was like, I don't know what I think about that. Yeah.
Sure. So there's a big problem which we might not solve in the next half an hour. But I think it's good to see that you have been doing work to kind of try alleviate alleviate maybe strain in a particular area that really needs a glimmer of hope. And as I've said before, I'm always willing to help whatever it is that you're doing. But yeah, if there's anyone listening, it would be great if there's some sort of holistic, detailed solution that we can help tackle this problem is. And if they can reach out to you, that would be great. But you're dealing with this interesting world of NGO and philanthropy. I want to just take it back to like maybe the beginning and to see what your journey was to, then in which you got into the space. But maybe I'll start off like early days. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Yeah, maybe I'll take it back to the beginning and find out where you're born and where you grew up.
So I was born in Harare, 1st of June, 1991. I can't remember what the hospital was called, but so at the time, my parents met probably a year before that, or 2 years before that. They got married really young at about 22. Yeah. And my dad had just started his career as a DJ. And so he's the infamous Tish Mataz that some of, I think our generation know, but our parents' generation definitely know. And so when I was born, we then immediately moved to, I don't know what it's called now, but it's called Boputatwana. It was Boputatwana. It's got a different name now.
Yes. So I know, goodness me, it's escaping me. Anyway, but continue. Yes. Yes.
So Boputatwana. So that's where we went. He had a job there, and I think we lived there for a year or two, and then he then got a job at 5FM. And then we
in South Africa. In South Africa.
Yeah, in South Africa. He then got a job at 5FM. He was actually the first Black DJ, 5FM.
Really?
And he was actually the first Black DJ. And so we lived there for maybe 8 years, I think. And then, my parents had another child. So my brother, his name is Tino. So it was the two of us. And because I was so young, I don't really remember what that life was like. My mom tells me it was wild and all over the place, but it was also very hard for them because they were foreigners, and South Africans didn't quite like that, there's this foreign Black guy who is doing so well. So a lot of stuff happened. Our lives actually were not safe anymore, so we moved back. I remember actually moving like very abruptly in the middle of the night. And that's how we came back to Zim. And for the most part, I didn't even know how to speak Shona. So I always say it's very embarrassing. I didn't even learn to speak the language there. But anyway, that was sort of like my childhood. We moved back to Zim, and then went to Alex Park. In SA, I was at a Christian school called Agapeland. And then when we moved over here, I went to Alex Park. My mom's cousin was actually the headmaster there. So when we moved, she's like, which schools? Obviously, it was like, they should come to
biased. Come to Alex Park. Sure.
And so that's where we went. I was there till like grade 7. So I think when we left, maybe it must have been grade maybe 2, I think. Just got there, joined the class, and then from there I went to Chizzy, which was an interesting.
Wait, maybe I'll pause. I'll pause before you got to. What was that transition going like from South Africa to Zim, especially at a young age? Was it a frictionless transition? I know, of course, you had your parents and your brother, but was it quite easy? Yeah,
it was. I would say it was very, very easy. I wish that I probably was older to have really experienced what that life was like.
Yes.
But I was just a child, I was just a child, and I didn't really care. And it's weird because a lot of people then say, you never really say who you are, where you come from. But for me, my dad is my dad. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I only hear of stories from my parents that, so we met this person, and this person used to come and dinner at our house, and this person, and this person, and this person. But honestly, to me, it was just like, okay, we've moved.
My parents have the person coming over. Oh, cool.
Okay,
whatever.
Cool.
Right. Yeah.
We've moved, and it was seamless. Our family was here anyway. And so life just began here, and we've been here ever since,
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So you went to Chizzy after Alex Park from for Form 1 to Form 6. What was that on a broad level? What was that experience like at high school there?
Oh.
Triggering.
Look, to be honest, I think it's a case study that needs to be done about girls' schools. I particularly did not, I don't want to say completely, I had some moments, but I didn't particularly enjoy my high school experience. And we'll get into why. But for me, it was very weird. The other day, I actually saw someone who did a reel, and they went to Gandhi, and she literally took a drive to go back to her old school. And I was like, wow, that must be so nice.
Some people actually do this, like, I'll have to go back to my high school too.
They go back to school and they feel nostalgic. For me, I have been back there to do work, but there definitely is no like, and a lot of people feel like this, they just don't say it, where high school was tough for some people. And I was definitely one of those people who had a tough high school experience.
Do you think it's big? And for example, I went to boarding school, all boys boarding school, and sometimes you'd be there. And look, it was a great school, but you'd be acutely aware of the fact that all boys schooling is not for everyone, or or this particular type of lane when it comes to senior school education is fine for some people, but definitely not shouldn't be for some people. So you would kind of feel the same from your high school experience?
I think so. And I think because I was at a co-ed primary school, and then I was with girls, right? And then you have like the Chizzy J
contingent
girls
that come through. Yes, they come through from knowing each other.
They're at a certain preschool together, then they're at junior school together, and then they're at high school together. So they understand that. Though I think it's not much of like a difference, I guess, because if you have brothers and stuff, you can have that co-ed experience. But you know, when you watch Mean Girls, have you watched that movie before?
Of course. Regina George, Gretchen Wiener. So you can feel, you felt it. You felt it.
Yeah, you can feel it. And the funny thing though is when you speak to other girls who went to other schools, they wish they came to Chizzy. So I think it's a girls thing. You speak to someone from Arundel and they'll be like, oh my gosh, we really wanted to come to Chizzy. Chizzy seemed fun. And you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I went to Arundel. So yeah, for me, I wish it had been better.
You're right.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things, from what I understood from, I guess, our friendship, is that one of the things that made it even more difficult is, you know, you getting endometriosis during your time there. So maybe for someone listening, tell us a little bit more about what that even is, because I don't think not everyone is fully versed on that condition, if I can call it that, and you know, what impact did it have on your high school experience whilst you're there?
So I mean, that's exactly why you're a good interviewer, by the way, Dumi. You know, it's flowing, you know. That's exactly why I think I have a bit of a bad relationship with high school. So I started my period when I was actually 9. So okay, another important thing that I didn't speak about is my parents then split up at actually shortly after we moved back. So I must have been about 10. I think 10 or something, 9 or 10. But I remember when I started my period, my mom was not there. So I was at school.
So you're living with your father at this stage? You're living with your father at this stage? And now
I was with
your
my
menstrual
father.
cycle.
I don't remember whether it was like a separation stage. I don't know, but I know my mom was not there. And so I started at school. And you know, they kind of explain to you like biology a bit, or they tell you, you know, if you happen to start your period at during school, then let a teacher know. So that's what I did. She was a very, very nice teacher. Till today, I remember her. So when I got picked up from school,
what was her name? What was her name?
Mrs. Chilimanzi.
And this is at Alex Park. What Chizzy? Is that Chizzy?
Alex Park.
Okay.
And so, she and you know, she waited for my dad to come, and she called him aside. She's like, "This is what's happened with Tine. So I know, like, her mom is not around. I would suggest you do A, B, C, D." And so we went to the shops, and I promise you, the guy bought like all different types of pads because he didn't know either.
Of course.
So you guys, he buys different types of pads, and I just get this plastic, and it's like, you know, there. And I'm also trying to figure out, okay, what do you do with these things? I think I'll help her. Helped me out to something. And then so yeah, that's how I started my period, and I had no issues at all. At all. It just was there. And I was one of the first girls, you know, in my class to start. And at the time, you actually think it's cool. Like, I'll start at first.
Right.
The other girls haven't started. And
wait, tell me something on that one point before I let you finish. There might be that particular situation around you staying with your dad, him having a daughter who's starting her period. I can imagine that there are numerous men who might have been, who are more, or are actually in similar situations. What advice would you give to any person who's a dad who's like listening that could be me in the future, right? Who's like got this daughter and doesn't even know where to even start. What advice would you kind of give to any man who's kind of might be in a similar shoes as your father was?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's so hard because generally, okay, what were you guys taught at school? You went to an all boys school.
Yes.
Like, was it just the biology, or they didn't even bother to tell you because they're like, it doesn't concern them?
Can I tell you? So for me, I remember I changed to do biology when I was 17. I remember the first time fully understanding the menstrual cycle, I was 16.
Okay.
And I did biology, and that was probably like one of my favorite, strangely, one of my favorite parts of biology was understanding how the menstrual cycle works. But then I remember I was part of that bio class, and there were maybe in a grade of 100 boys, maybe about 15, 20 boys doing it. So what I wondered was like, geez, I'm of course getting this knowledge, but how about the 80 other boys in the grade who aren't actually privy to what is, a uterine lining? What is, it's like, what are all of these? What is a fallopian tube? All of these things?
Yeah.
And so I was, of course, have exposure, but I can safely say I don't think everyone was fully given that same insight. So we don't really know, if I'm honest.
Yeah. And the truth is, I think we were all taught that way, like what it looks like, what a fallopian tube is. But the truth is, like, I would, especially in junior school, right? If you're co-ed, the boys are laughing. Okay.
Right.
The boys are laughing. And so you're just wanting that lesson to finish, and you're like, I don't know. Okay. So back to that question, awkward. I think men have to kind of take the time to Google, understand. There's so much information out there of how it works, how to speak to your daughter about a first period. It doesn't even need to be a case like mine. What about if your wife has traveled? You know what I mean? I guess maybe you can call and be like, you know what? She started her period. But let me tell you something. It's not just men, okay? There are women and aunties and gogos and etc. who live with girls, and what you are told is, okay, one day blood is going to come out. There are people who don't even understand where the blood is coming from. Blood is going to come out, and when that happens, just make sure you don't sleep around because you will fall pregnant. That is what you usually get told, by tete, or mom or gogo, of which, again, the society we're living in now, we don't really have that relationship. Yana, tete, nana, gogo. We're so urbanized.
Right.
Yeah, we're so urbanized. I think our mothers assume that we know what's going on, but the other issue is they actually don't know what's going on because nobody sat down and spoke to them either, And so I would say, don't, especially for men, don't assume it's just a woman's issue, because you will at some point need to deal with a woman on your period. You've got a sister. I have a brother. You have a girlfriend. You have a wife, and she's going through it. And being completely clueless is not going to help you. And so that happens.
So read. So basically, to anyone who's listening, read, try to understand. Ask questions. I
remember my brother would ask me, like, so where does the blood come out from? I'm like, it comes out from the vagina. But, it sounds like a silly question, but he's trying to understand.
Exactly. It's a good question.
She's bleeding. What's going on? And then what happens? Ask the questions. I think also, I'll also take blame for institutions. We've recently started doing it as well, where when we're having talks, we incorporate the guys. There's women empowerment, so much of it, but like, who's having conversations with the men and the boys? The men,
because they should be able to almost like, I should be able to have the conversation to be like, guys, this is what is actually happening when X, Y, and Z is going on,
Yes.
And I think also like creating a safe space in which a male should feel comfortable enough to impart that knowledge to other men as well, as opposed to just from women.
And to ask that silly question and be told, actually, no, it works like this. So that happens. No issues. Go to high school. No issues with it. And one day, I was coming from Scripture Union, so. I see my other high school experiences, I was like, I always went to church, but I really, really like understood salvation in Form 2. And I was part of Scripture Union. I used to serve Upper Six. I ended up becoming the head of Scripture Union, which was, I don't know why, to a lot of people uncool, you know. And so I was the
Really?
Scripture Union girl.
Or you were that?
Yeah,
Or you were that? You're that chick
that
on
one.
at
And I'm telling you so that you understand the context. So
sure.
I'm coming from Scripture Union that day, and then I feel like this funny side pain, and I'm like, what's going on? Okay, this is weird. Anyway, life moves on. It comes and it goes, comes and it goes. And because I've never had issues surrounding my period, I'm like, something is wrong. And what I used to do is I used to track my days. So tracking days means like if you start on the 7th, you kind of know, okay, 7th, if you have a 21-day cycle, if you...
And this is your period, right? You track your days of your period.
Yeah. So you start on the 7th. Let's say you have a 3-day cycle, it's going to be 7th till about 10, 11, and then you wait another 21 days and it comes back. And then because I used to track it, I was able to actually see, you know, things haven't been normal. Because you're so busy at school. You know, high school can be so busy. You're in class, you've got afternoons class, you've got clubs. And another big thing was I struggled with sport. So I played soccer, which was not like high impact, but I still struggled with sport, you know. I would just have so much pain after sport to the point where, you know what, the teacher was like, you know, this one, just leave her, you know. Even got a doctor's letter to say, I struggle with sport, cross country, I couldn't do it. So things start to link up, like I have some type of health issue, but I don't know what's going on. So after some time, after realizing this, I communicated again. At the time, I'm still living with my dad, okay? My mom was, half of the time she was either not in Zim or not in Harare. Yeah. So I'm living with my dad. I see her holidays and other times, but he's remarried, okay, at this point.
Okay.
And so I'm communicating as well. Like, I don't feel well. I don't know what it is. We go to our family doctor, right? You know, who's treated people since, I don't know, we go to the same church, that sort of thing. And she says to me, you know, I think it's O-level stress, because it was about that time when you're doing, you know how we did double, O-level was basically 2 years.
Yes. So whilst you're having all of this pain, are you just basically having infrequent period cycles? It's not like a perpetual...
Yes, infrequent, right, at the time. Sure. Infrequent, longer, more painful, right? And so I'm missing school some days, or I go to school in the morning and I'm okay-ish, and by like 10 I'm dying and I'm going to the sick bay. And by now even teachers are like, what's going on with her? Like, this is not her. And I am I'm a person who's serious about whatever I'm doing. So, you know, they're like, she's slacking a bit on her work. You know, she's kind of dragging her feet. I was even struggling with my bag. One of my friends, you know, she would even carry my bag for me. And so like, it's like something is wrong, but we've gone to the doctor and the doctor says, well, we can't find anything wrong with her. I think she's stressed. She's writing exams. Let's see. So just before we write O-level exams, I started bleeding profusely now, where it did not stop. And my doctor's like, okay, obviously you're not going to be able to sit for almost a month doing exams whilst you're bleeding like this. So I was put on a form of contraception, which is a injection called Depo. And that didn't work out well. I actually bled more. So when I wrote my O-level exam, I literally like went in with a blanket, a hot water bottle, was given extra time, and like teachers just had to watch me because I could faint. Like, so because I was losing so much blood, I could be having a conversation with someone at school and just like go down.
And no one knows at any point what is going on with your body.
No. At this point now, she's pretending she's looking for attention. This is coming from
it's like
Tina, you know, the Scripture Union girl is just
she's doing a lot. She's like, there she goes. Yeah,
you
goodness
know,
me.
she comes to school with a hot water bottle and it's summer. Like, what's her problem, you know? And so I laugh about it now, but that's exactly what was happening. And so at the point I told myself, okay, look, and I would speak to my dad and say, I can't go to that school anymore, move me. And he's like, no, you're about to finish, you know, life is like that. You know, he gives you the pep talk, life is like that. And I'm like, no, it's really bad. And not everyone was bad, but you kind of feel like you're always being watched. And, you know, people say a lot of things. At some point, people were saying I had an abortion. That's why I bleed so much. It was crazy. It was so crazy. And
yeah.
So anyway, I told myself, okay, I've got about 2 years left here.
What was the lowest point? What was the lowest point? What was the lowest point?
Lowest point, I think, was not really having a support system. I had a group of friends that I loved so much. And literally one day they sat me down and said, we can't play with you. And it sounds silly, but I remember being sat down and being told, you know, this is too much. We can't. And so we would see each other in the corridors and not speak.
Literally like the movie Mean Girls. Literally
yeah, and not speak. And that was hard, and would be in the same, you know, kind of class. And then sometimes you ask to do group work and you happen to be with one of them. And I think that for me was the lowest. And I isolated myself. I did my work. I spent a lot of time in the library, and I just said to myself, I need to get through this. After all, I am at school to learn. But, you know, the social part is very important. So that's your form 4, your lower 6. By the time we got to upper 6, I must say a few people were like, honestly, this girl cannot be pretending for like 2 years.
For this long?
Yeah,
it's real.
A few people now are like, yeah, but they don't want to show that they actually care or they're empathizing. And again, we still don't know what's wrong. Okay. Still don't know what's wrong. And you get to the point where you're like, I don't know. Something is wrong with me. I don't know, but let me get on with it. And so I promise you, you know, when the last day of school, some people were crying and I was like, thank you, Lord. Finally. I mean, I do have like people that I was like, wow, I'll miss them. But generally the atmosphere, I was like, I'm not gonna miss this. I'll miss some people, but I'm not gonna miss this whole thing. And so yeah, that high school part.
That was high school. So tell me something. This is tough, right? Life can be not, I don't want to say unfair, but it can be unfair. And what it is sometimes, where in high school careers, there's certain critical points in, you know, that are make or break years, if I can put them that way. So O level is one of them, right? From like a marks academic perspective, and then A level as well. Then you are really hit with this, with endometriosis, or you are hit with this thing that you don't know that you're having in those 2 pinnacle years. So of course, like from the onset, you're not, I don't want to say at a disadvantage, but you've been hamstrung in a way, right? Because you can't perform at an optimal level at this stage.
Yes.
So the question I have is like, so then after, you know, you finish high school, were you at a place where you were happy with your output from an academic perspective? And did that compromise what life looked like for you afterwards? You know what I'm saying?
So interesting enough, O level, I did well. But like, I'm a perfectionist. So O level for me was a white blazer. I didn't care what it looked like, what the grades looked like. I was getting a white blazer.
What does a white blazer mean? What does a white blazer mean?
I can't remember. It's like 10 stars, something ridiculous like that. Like now I laugh. Right. People do it, but it's a lot of pressure.
It's a big deal, right? These things now that
you're almost going to kill yourself for a piece of paper that
for a piece of fabric.
Yeah.
For a garment, anyway.
So because of everything, teachers have already told me, and I wasn't like your first class and a performer, and teachers already sat me down and said, you know what, Tine, you may not achieve what you want to achieve. We want you to know it's okay. You know, they were really good. And I'm like, no. I'm getting that white blazer, and you know, you do your vision boards and what? Come
manifest.
manifest.
Yeah.
Come result day. I get my results, and so I'm not looking at the results. I'm counting the A stars. Huh?
Really?
They're not 10. That's what I'm doing. They're not 10. I cry. Start crying. People are coming. What's wrong? I'm just passing the piece of paper. And people are like, oh my gosh, well done. You did so well. What? And I did do well. Very, very well. I had A stars, but they were not 10. A stars, some A's, some B's. And that's now. So I get in the car. I show my dad. He's shocked. He's like, okay, how did she do this in this condition? Wow, great. This, that. And he's asked, Tine, what's your problem? No, I didn't get the white blazer. I said, you just want to wear a white blazer. What's your problem? It's like, a white blazer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there was that. And then now, funny enough, lower 6, I'm like, I don't care about this thing. Come lower 6, I did the most now, right? I got like, I think it was, can't remember. But A level, I got like 3 A's, AS. So they would do, it's kind of different. You guys did matric, right?
Yeah, we did matric. But you, I know in the, how can I say, you did IG, you did AS levels, then A levels afterwards, right?
Yes. So, at AS level, I got like 3 A's and I was shocked. Like, what is this? You know, even the teachers were like, huh? But I think it's because I wasn't like concentrating so much on the blazer anymore. I was just like,
let's do it.
Let's do it, you know? And that for me was a lesson because it became an obsession. I think because I was trying to prove to people that even though I'm unwell, I can still do it. And it was like, it wasn't about the blazer. And then come A level, I also do well. And there was a particular teacher who she sat me down and she's like, wow, Tine, like, wow, what's going on, you know? She was very nice. Her name was Mrs. M. And she was the most feared teacher at Chizzy, but she was so nice to me. Like she didn't want anybody to mess with me. And she's like, oh my gosh, Tine, what is this? This is so great. But at the time, I wasn't obsessed with it anymore. I was just like, okay, great results. Let's move on. So in terms of performance, it didn't affect me that much because I'm a good learner. I'm organized. And I think I pushed to do what I could. And I was just happy.
It worked out okay.
And you know, I would have options at this point for uni, but then we get into that.
Yes. So what happened like after that? So you've pushed through your health issues at the stage, or you're pushing through rather, and then you finish high school. So then what was, of course, you've been working on a lot of this stuff now, but what was that transition?
So now I am. So, you know, when you're in upper 6, you have your plans of, I'm going to go to this uni, etc.
What did you want to be? What did you want to be, by the way? Did you want to be anything?
Yes, a lawyer.
Yes, really?
I actually applied for law. Such a it's weird. Applied for law only because I was told, you're bright, you'd be a great lawyer. I would have been a terrible lawyer, to be honest. I know that. But you that or a doctor. Those were the 2 options. And then during my high school experience, I was so engulfed in like talking to people. I was a listener. I would get into the community projects at school. And sometimes I would say, I want to be a social worker. My family would be like, what's that? Social worker? What's that? I have an uncle.
Is there money in social working? No,
I have an uncle.
Yes,
I won't say his name, but you know him.
Yes.
And he's very blunt.
Yes.
Just like,
yes.
Do you think social workers drive my beds? I'm like, no, but that's what I want. She's like, no way. We will never accept that in this family. In this family, we have people who
work in
deal
finance,
with money,
or we do this.
finance.
Yes.
That's what people do. Social worker, you're crazy.
Yes.
So we finish high school. I'm applying. I'm getting the places. I think I even got scholarships for 2 places. But if it was anytime Endo was like, let me do the thing, now I'm bleeding nonstop.
So what is endo before we go on? So what
endometriosis is...
So now we know what we're experiencing. We know what we're experiencing now, which is endometriosis. Okay.
It's a whole other story for another day, but I eventually get a diagnosis. Even after having an operation. I had an operation just after school. So I finished school 2010. I had an operation 2011. At this point now, I was like, let me go spend time with my mom because she will really understand it. So I then moved to my mom's, and we basically dedicating all our time to find out what is wrong.
What's going on?
She's like, because she's like, we can't send you all the way to... At that point, I wanted to go to the UK, and we don't know what's wrong with you. So let's do this thing. So we start going to specialists and etc, and they start saying, look, okay, obviously this person can't be in pain for 2 to 3 years. It's a reproductive condition, but we're not sure. And so I have an operation 2011, and I am diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which means your ovaries just have little cysts on, and that can cause pain, bleeding, but it's a male-dominated disease. So you have, women who have like facial hair, who struggle with weight. Those are your top signs of sort of having PCOS, right? Women who at, such young ages are told that they are showing signs of being pre-diabetic, missing periods as well. And I didn't have that, but that's what the doctor said. I'm like, okay, but I didn't get better. And then so I carried on seeing doctors, and started Googling for myself. Again, at this point, my peers have started school, by the way. And I am just...
your mom and her just...
I'm in my mom and I'm just going round and round and round in circles. And you're talking to people like, what are you doing? And I'm still in Zim. And I think for me, that was also a hard part, because I felt like...
How did you feel? During that period? Everyone's moving on.
I felt like behind. I felt very behind. Like, what? This shouldn't be happening. I had the worst time in high school. Now, like, I feel like I'm being mocked again for being behind. Some people are in first year, second year. I haven't even started school, and I still can't even give a reason why.
But
anyway, I eventually then traveled to South Africa, and I promise you, like 10 minutes, the doctor's like, you have this condition, it's called endometriosis. And I've read of it. Yes, I've read of it. I know it. And a doctor here had actually said to me, you're too young to have it, and women of color don't get it. And I was like, but that's what this doctor said. He's like, no, that's nonsense. You have it. I know you've had another surgery. Do you want to do another one? I'm like, no, I can't. I'm still recovering from that one. What can we do? So the journey starts. So you have the diagnosis, the journey starts, and then they start telling you all these things. So you've got endo because it was found late, and obviously being treated late, you're stage 4, you're probably not going to have kids. They're giving you all these options. So you've got the diagnosis. You should be happy. Like, okay, I know what's wrong with me. But at the same time, in a space of 10, 15 minutes, you've been given so much information and you need to make a decision. So I was like, let me go think about it. So I decided to just do, oral hormones, things that I can take as tablets. And I did that for some time just to manage it, because was diagnosed stage 4. It is the worst stage. And at this point, I am in pain every day, not just psycho-related, taking painkillers every day. And I'm trying to create a new normal for myself. And at least I can tell people, look, I have this. And you almost want to like go to other people or family members and be like, guys, I told you something was wrong.
Something was wrong. It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
It's a
yes.
thing. You know,
yes.
It's a thing. And
so
yeah.
Okay. So we found out we found out that you've been diagnosed with endometriosis. We have to, of course, make these decisions as to like, come to terms with your reality. And everyone's moving on in your life, but of course you have this epiphany, or you have this news. So at this stage, what does this mean for you from a schooling perspective, but then also from like a career perspective, if I can call it that? Like, was this like because it's a pivotal moment, right? Like, this is a crossroads, I either make the most of it or I wallow in my self-pity. What did you make out of that situation?
So for, I think the first, obviously, whilst looking for a diagnosis, I was very, very depressed. My mom always used to question me. She's like, did something happen to you when I was not around? Like, you don't realize that you're actually depressed and you're withdrawn, and because it's a horrible place to be in. And so now I understand what's going on. I understand what I'm dealing with. I understand my options. During this time, I had thought about doing online distance learning education, but I'll be honest, I think again, I'm like, people are gonna laugh at me again and be like, oh, she does school online, etc. But that's an option for me now. Like, okay, there's UNISA, I ask around. People tell me, yeah, I did a degree with it, this. And the nice thing is it's flexible, you create your own hours. And so now, also aha moment, I apply for law. Something happened. I just didn't get my kit that semester. I didn't get it. And in this moment I'm in, what you're asking me, a moment of reflection. And I'm like, okay, there's two ways to deal with this. Either I take this on and try to make the most of it, or I keep fighting this thing. And I decided, no, I'm going to make the most of it. So I sat down and I was actually like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I actually don't want to be a lawyer. And I sat my family down and I'm like, I've been through so much. I'm not about to do something that I don't want to do. So I'm going to do psychology. I'm not sure which type, but I'm going to sit. I'm going to go through what I want to do. Same time again, like I said, I was always like very interested in community work. And because I'm at home and I'm doing nothing, I am sitting and I'm like, what do I really want to do? And I have, the old black counter books. I'm writing, I want to do this, I want to do this.
So you're writing, literally just thinking like.
Writing and thinking,
right.
Because I've got so much time. I'm at home, I'm in bed, so much time I'm writing. I'm like, but how do I do this? Because I'm not well. I don't have a degree. Who's going to listen to somebody who doesn't have a degree? Okay. So what I did was I spoke to someone who was like in the NGO space, and I started moving around with them just to see what it looked like. And I'm like, no, this is more about passion. And I remember I did my first outreach. It just made sense. I then applied for community and health psych because I knew I wanted to get into wellness and also help community. So that's what I applied for. And my stuff came and I started. That's 2014 now. And then my first outreach, I literally went to kids cancer. And I sat there with some kids who have cancer, and we had some treats and stuff like that. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. For the first time,
you could feel it. What is it about that moment that made you feel like, yes?
I could feel it. Like, I'm like, for the first time, not that I'm not in pain. This is not about me. This is about someone else. And I can relate to these children, And So I started off very small, like, at that time, this Facebook, hey guys, I want to visit this place. Can you donate, etc., etc., etc. But on the fly, and remember, I'm also doing the degree at the same time, and you're learning about community, learning about ownership, you're learning about certain things. And they would then also say, please try and volunteer certain number of hours so that you also get like the practical. And here I am doing it anyway. So I sit down and I'm like, you know what, this is what I want to do. I'm going to call my organization As I Am Foundation, because I want people to be seen as they are, with, whatever they're going through, but also as, I was called the sick girl, but that's not who I am.
Right. Right.
I have the condition and whatever. So take me as I am, and so that's how it was birthed. And so I started asking around, how do you register? How do you do this? That's a whole tedious work. And I just start small groups, etc., etc. You start getting good reputation to where I am now. But then also, as I'm doing the work, there's the community side. Remember, I'm also dealing with my health issues. You're talking to women in these areas, and then you realize people have no information. I've got a diagnosis. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm the only person in Zimbabwe with endo, which is not true.
Which is not true. Of course, there must be other people like myself
that
exist
other
out there.
People like me.
Right. Right.
And then what are the main issues? Late diagnosis, no information, myths. I would be told, in Greater Mana, if you have a child, it would disappear. And doctors sat me down and like, it's not that. This is a condition, honey. Okay?
This is a thing.
This is a thing. And so that part, I remember my grandmother's sister is a nurse at Lancet. And so she did blood tests on someone else who had endo. And, Google, who doesn't even know how to say it, it's like, my granddaughter has this, get in touch with her. So I didn't speak to that lady. I'm like, that's someone else, so we're talking and I'm like, surely it can't be just us. I went onto Facebook. I realized there's tons of Facebook groups of women.
It's a whole community.
There's a whole community, right? But guess what? There isn't a Zim community. There's the UK one, the USA one, Barbados, there's no Zim. And I'm like, no. And so I was like, I'm starting the community. So I started the community. I think we were about 4 women. And at the time, I'm like, is this going to work? And I'm talking about it on Facebook and then on Instagram. Remember, I started using Instagram quite late. Someone said, you should use it for the stuff you talk about.
Awareness, right.
Awareness. And people started listening now. Like, she's onto something, things just start making sense. You go on radio, you go on TV. And in the very beginning, I think it's about 2015, I then had another operation 2015, 2016. I would get bad feedback. Hey, why are you talking about stuff like that?
Really?
You shouldn't be talking.
Really?
Yeah, and this is on Facebook. People are commenting, why are you talking about stuff like that? That's not right. Your period is a secret. I'm like, oh, okay.
No,
now you guys
please no. Please no.
I remember, I'll never forget someone who actually said, she's a witch, Imagine, she's a witch because...
Goodness me. Yeah. The ignorance.
Because she can't be talking about going on a period like all the time. It's not normal, whatnot. And I'm like, we have a serious problem here now. If people can't even empathize.
And I think the more I hear about it, it's not like you're doing it for yourself. It's really not about you. You're doing it for others who might not have had a voice, or kind of giving voice to other women who might be going through the same thing. That's really why you're doing it, not for yourself.
Yeah. And so at that point, I'm generally a soft person. But I was like, I need to have tough skin if I'm going to do this, because I'm telling the truth and this happens. Sometimes I'll be on forums with doctors who'll be like, no, that's not true. It's crazy. No, that's not true. There's no way someone can bleed for a whole year. And I'm like, but that happened to me. It's my experience, you know. But then like, when you then speak to other women, you're like, okay, well, I'm not crazy. It's fine. And so I started the Zim Endo support group here, and doing awareness, speaking about it. And now we're like over 100 women. We've just started a project, very, very exciting project, where we are using Bitcoin to alleviate financial, with a company called Impact Market. So because the condition is very expensive, I've had 4 surgeries, and it's not been easy, hey? Right. Where, you know, as a family, you sit and people contribute, and this, you're on medication every day. And because of the way the disease is so debilitating, a lot of us cannot like keep a full-time job. I'm fortunate that I work for myself, or I do my own thing, but some women don't have that. Some women didn't even finish school. There's a particular lady in our community who is a trained nurse, but she can't work because she can't be on her feet every day because she's in pain. And so she's just sitting at home. She has had 13 surgeries. And so we've recently started.
Go on. Yeah, how do people finance this? Because of course, yes.
A project. So it's support, like emotional support. It's information, so that you don't go round and round in circles. It's, if you think you have these symptoms, we actually have an endo doctor, but people don't know that there's an endo doctor in Zim. You would rather go to the specialist, pay so much, than go to 205, well, not 200, but like 10 doctors, you know.
Sure.
Get your diagnosis quickly, get treated quickly, you know. And so that's what I was like, okay, issues, early diagnosis, emotional support, financial support, right? Because remember, it's not all of us who went to Chizi and have endo, hey? It's people from all walks of life.
Yes.
And so we recently started we're in partnership with a company called Bitflex and Impact Market, where we have like a crowdsource platform, where we've started very small. At the moment it's 10, but it will increase because we're sort of testing it out, where women get a certain amount of money every week to buy their drugs and their pads. Because when you have a condition like endometriosis, you might be on for 2 months, you know, and that becomes highly expensive. And you know, STEM is hard. And so we've been doing that. And I think that it makes me very proud to know at least, you know, some women are getting a little bit of help. You know, I can't fix the problem. I wish there was a cure. There is no cure. But it's nice to see that women have a platform to speak, and you know other women know exactly what you're speaking about. They are getting, what we did is we chose the most vulnerable, and so they get their payouts every week. It's a transparent process. There's actually an app, and so people can see that this money went to this person, etc.
Right. So what cryptocurrency helps do is it brings transparency around, like, if my money is not getting lost in the bond note abyss.
Exactly.
It gets deployed.
I mean, the only
from
issue
wherever,
that we do have is because it's cryptocurrency, but
regulation.
But we have found a way to get it to the women as cash. But it's a brilliant idea, actually, and
for sure.
You know, I'm hoping to use it even with other projects. But particularly for this one, the company was they wanted to help women with endo because they were so shocked that, this happens, you know, what can we do? And so, that's basically how I got to where I am now.
To do as I am. And
as I am,
well, firstly, I think there's one thing that's kind of standing out, that throughout like your journey, I think there've been moments and inflection points where you often say, oh, but what will people think of me? Or
Yeah.
what will they say? So what I guess, is that still a thing that you have for yourself? Or have you, with time, shaken that off? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Or do you kind of just nurse it as you go?
I think I nurse it as I go. I have times where I question myself, because we are in an age where there's certain things that are popular on social media. And so me constantly talking about periods, sometimes I'm like, ish, you know what? People are like, what's wrong with this girl?
They're like, ha!
Oh, I'm constantly saying, guys, I need $5 for this and this. And like, this girl, you know?
Yes.
But I must say, God has been good. He constantly reminds me, when I have those low days, you get a random message from someone who says, you know what, I saw this on Instagram and it helped my sister, or it helped me. And so you nurse it as you go. And the thing is, sometimes people forget that I'm going through it as well. So it can be quite overwhelming when you have 20 women who have answers and you're like, yo, I didn't sleep last night as well, but okay. You know,
I'm now the advocate. I'm the endo warrior now, and I have to, right.
Yeah, and people get touchy sometimes. They get very touchy, like, why didn't she answer my call then? You know, but I remind myself that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You remember why you started. You remember where you came from. And it's people always ask me,
why did you start? Why did you start? That's the question.
Why did I start? To make a change, to be part of the solution. You mentioned earlier in 2018, I think also one of my biggest moments, 2018, when I was selected to be an Obama Foundation leader. Now, I need you to understand, I was with like your amazing people. Do you know that like we met, I always forget his name, the manager of Manchester United, and we met Obama. We met all these people, right?
Right.
And then they're sitting, and basically it was a week of them encouraging, especially African leaders, to continue to do what they're doing because it's hard. And then you also meet people who've been in the community sphere longer than you have, and who have done these amazing things, like they're the youngest ambassador, they're this and this. You know, it's funny enough, in the community as well, we size each other, you know, like, ooh.
Oh, they were like, oh, okay, you.
You know, ooh, this person did this, you know, this person's been knighted. You know, I met a girl who's been knighted by the Queen, because she has this organization called Stand to Rape. But let me tell you something, Jimmy.
Yes.
I was the only person out of 100 people who was talking about menstrual health issues. So we'd sit at dinner and you're trying to get to know people, and they ask you, what do you do? And you explain to them and they look at you like, huh? Oh, okay, you're right. And then there's people who've come with innovative ideas, you know, and it's a catch-22, because you feel like, wow, these guys actually were like, she's doing something. She needs to be part of this. But I also felt isolated, because I felt like what I was doing was not cool enough, right? You're meeting people who are creating energy out of waste, you know, and you're talking about period poverty, you know, and some people also still look at you like, I think it was 2019, I then went to Unleash, which was in China, and that was more of a first world program. Believe it or not, there's a lady from Deloitte who said to me, you're lying. What you're saying is not true. That still can't be happening in Africa. And I was like, oh my gosh, the school fees thing? She was like, no. I don't believe that. What do you mean? What do you mean that you guys are still dealing with bread and butter issues? You know? So it looks glamorous. To some people it's like, wow, but there's so much that you fight for. And you constantly have to nurse yourself. I also speak to people, you know, when I feel like, oh, this is too much. maybe, I've got degrees, maybe I should get a proper job. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I should.
You say like, I'm going to throw in this towel because this is a lot to bear. This thing
people will be like, is it a proper job? But it is like 24/7, you're thinking of solutions, you're doing grants, you're doing this. But to some people, it's not a conventional job as well. So I think you constantly have to nurse yourself and be like, and remember, you started because you want to make a change. You want to be part of the solution. You wanted to count for something, Not everyone can be an advocate, hey? But for those who have the energy, do it. You can't complain about something and not be part of the solution or try. And
yes,
at the Obama thing, the tagline was, we are the ones, right? So we are the ones who are going to change the world, And so, yeah, that's why I started. And I also think about where I was, and I'd rather choose this one than being depressed and in bed, So I always learn, like, you know what? I think this is better than where I was, say, 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago.
So look, I would say first of all, like, congratulations. I know I'm certainly proud, and everyone else will be listening, you can feel the same. I think the power comes in the fact that you owned I think there's a very important moment where you kind of said, you took a pen in your hand, you had a notebook, and you're just writing, what do I want to do? You were where you were, but you literally rewrote your trajectory. You know what I'm trying to say? With a pen and a paper, you literally wrote what you wanted to do, and you owned your narrative.
And let me tell you something. By the time I did graduate, the NGO was moving, you know what I mean? But in my mind, I was like, who's going to listen? But let me tell you, half of the people don't even ask me, like, so what did you do? It's more of the information you have and your passion. Half of the people are not saying, I want to see your degree. And I think we get so swamped in the accolades and what we have in ETC. Just start. You learn along the way. And your passion and your why, my why is, I'm also waking up every day and I'm in pain and I'm like, you know what? This is why we need to fix these issues, right? Some people, I guess, they burn out, or they're like, it's not worth it. And I think sometimes because you forget why you're even doing what you're doing. If there's no purpose for it, trust me, you are going to have challenges. And it's very easy to throw in the towel and say, you know what, it's okay. I tried, Yeah.
Okay. So we are where we are right now, right? And you've owned your journey. You've felt pain. I think you wrote a book actually called Turning Pain into Power, right? And you've really learned to like turn that pain into power and use your life as a platform to, of course, to live a life of purpose that is geared towards making life better for other people out there, right? One of the things I don't like is when we have people like yourself who are doing all of this work, but like there's not enough people getting behind them. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because as you mentioned before, not everyone can be an advocate, right? So I think it's important that we, or at least people that are around you, support you in any way that we can, right? So my question for you would be like, right now, out of the main things that you're working on, what are the main things that we could support you with? Is it taking it? Yeah, maybe I'll pause there. What is the kind of key things that we can kind of get behind you and assist you with?
Sharing information, I think just the power of even sharing a post. I think, I always see these posts on Instagram that say you need to have people who will mention your name in a room of opportunities, So for example, the Bitflix thing, it was someone who mentioned my name, someone who happened to share about it and said, we know the person you need.
There's this
person, and I was like, wow, and initially when you get such an opportunity, you're trying to prove yourself, and they're like, no, trust me, the person who
plugged you. Like it's
who plugged you is like, don't worry, So I think things like that, supporting, posting, helping out where you can, because community starts with the people you know.
Right.
For example, with TACTS, initially it was 10 people that I know. And then from there, they told other people and they shared stuff. And I think it's just about listening. Also, helping is not always monetary, but saying, I know this person, maybe speak to this person,
Right. So relationships, it could be a person saying, oh, there's this education, right. There's this education issue. Talk to
this person. I have an uncle, do this. I think also not, we need to avoid having apathy and saying, this doesn't concern me, because I think we look at things on social media and you're like, okay, it doesn't concern me, doesn't affect me, but you never know. That's the thing about life. You never know. So try and do your best wherever you can, I even, as a community leader, I'll be honest, sometimes you look at another organization, right? And you're like, oh, why should I get involved? I'm also running my own. No, let's help each other out. If another organization is looking for something that you have, plug them, and let's keep the circle going and realize it's not a competition. Let's collaborate. Let's help each other as young people to solve these issues, because we all have something we can give. I'm a very good programmer, right? Very, very good, but I'm not a great marketer. And I've had to get in touch with other people who I look at, who have NGOs, and I'm like, how are you doing this? Because I'm not a great marketer, please help me. So we just need to help each other out.
And kind of do you think we do enough of that?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I don't want to rile feathers, but I think social media is a problem. I love social media, but it's also a problem because I think sometimes our priorities are so wrong. I look at people in the entertainment industry or your influencers. Those people support each other. They support each other. They repost each other. There's a thing about, I don't know, community and people who are familiar, that sometimes I look at you as Dumi, right? Not Dumi who's done A, B, C, D. So I think we need to improve on that, and meet people where they are. Because I will say a lot of my loyal supporters are people I don't know. People who, when you meet them, they'll tell you your history and you'll be like, how did you know? And they're like, I follow this stuff.
Really? Right.
So I think we definitely need to do better and be honest and be like, what, Tine, I can't help you with money, but let me know if I can come pull through at an outreach. Let me know if I can drive you. Let me know if I can bake a cake. These are just examples of how we can help each other, and not always expect something out of it as well. My favorite quote is, we rise by lifting others. So that's exactly what it is. We just have to continue to lift each other up, Yeah.
I think on that point, I guess the parting question I have for you, firstly, this has been great for me. I think on that point you talk about we rise by lifting others. For me, the thing I learned, I think specifically is the power, the past year I would say, is the power of storytelling and shining light on each other. And because people might not remember the detailed information around how the menstrual cycle works, but they'll remember your story about the pain you went through in high school. And they'll hear that story in someone else and instinctively know, okay, gosh, there's this girl called Tine, she has solutions for this, or at least a pathway to a solution for this particular problem. So I think for me, it's been incredibly important to shine light on you and your story. And the last parting point I have is, I guess, what would you say to maybe a young Zimbabwean girl that would kind of be in your particular shoes dealing with, I guess, endo one, but then two might want to go into NGO space, but might be on the fence around what guidance or feedback would you give to them, or encouragement, if you will?
So first of all, in terms of endo and menstrual health issues, you have to continue to fight and be your own advocate. The ugly truth is sometimes even the people who are close to you won't understand it. Don't get too caught up in that, because even I had to learn. I have to be honest and say, if I didn't have it, I probably wouldn't care, or I probably would be like, oh, I'm also woman shame, but okay, but you have to advocate for yourself. You can't give up, because unfortunately with diseases like this, they can turn into cancers. It affects fertility. You can find yourself in a really, really big hole. Speak to people. Don't be ashamed. A lot of women also then say, but I don't even have money to go to the doctor. And I'm like, okay, can you speak to an aunt? Can you speak to this person? And the first thing is they're ashamed. They're even ashamed of the fact that having a reproductive health issue means you're not a real woman, or because fertility is attached to it. They're thinking of the ability to have children, but they're forgetting about the quality of life. So I would say advocate for yourself, read, ask people. There is information out there. There's so much information out there. Get groups that you can join, get support, join support networks. Support networks are very, very tricky, because people, and I get it, people get very antsy about being in groups, especially with people that they don't know. But support is so amazing, because it's just about talking. Like I said, sometimes you don't have a solution, but talking to someone else really helps. My last thing about reproductive health is pain is not normal. Don't let anybody ever tell you pain is normal. It's not. Pain that's stopping you from doing normal activities, from going to school, from going to work, basically disrupting your life, is not normal. So remember that and see someone as soon as you can. Those are the parting words for that. And then in terms of the NGO space and community work, start, be teachable. Just start, be teachable. Ask people. How did you start? I'm very open. Come into my DM. I'll let you know. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of tedious stuff, but you will get there, right? Like I said, I started by kind of going with other people and seeing, Kuti, how do they do it? And they started weaning myself off. I'm like, okay, these are the structures. There's this amazing lady. I just don't know how to say her name. Her name is Sibu Lelele. I will send it to you. Maybe you can put it underneath. She shares some really great information on how to start an NGO, etc. But volunteer as well. Volunteer. I have a lot of people who come through and they volunteer and they're expecting something. It doesn't always work that way. Volunteer and actually see if it's something you can actually do, because sometimes it can be for a phase. A lot of us thought, by year 6 we would have these offices and these shelters and etc, and it's not there yet. But because we understand the assignment, we're holding on. Don't feel like you're in competition. Collaborate with other people as well, right? We can all share the same space. There's enough people to help guys.
We aren't competing. We're collaborating.
We're collaborating. There is enough space. But most of all, just start. Because people think of so much funding, this, that, just start. You will learn. It comes.
Yes, it comes as you go. Yeah. Tina, this has been wonderful for me. This has been really good for me. I think it's been really great hearing about the strands that have, held your life together in many ways. And keep wishing you all the best, and could keep supporting you in any way that you can. I think for me, the couple of things I want to just, if anyone's listening, whether it's from a networking perspective and kind of problem solving, I think specifically for me that touches me is that education piece, and maybe how can we help kids there. But then similarly on the endo part, whether it's reaching out to some of the cryptocurrency platforms that you guys are working with there.
Yeah.
And then also awareness. But all in all, this has been great. But thanks for the time. And
thank you so much for having these conversations. They're important. And this is exactly how it starts, the supporting each other and just getting the word out there. And it's COVID, but we made a plan. And we
for sure.
We've got to adjust and do what we can. So thank you so much for thinking of me. And we just continue to keep going, to keep moving, as people will say.
Keep moving forward. We move.
Yeah.
Move in